Now, I know we're giving Albo what he wants, which is endless conversation about the voice, but there are people with different perspectives that I want to hear from, including the former Victorian Premier, Jeff Kennett, who's got lots of experience behind the scenes about how this could or could not go down.
I was very honoured to have been one of 3 non-Indigenous people to serve on the working groups that led to the final Calma and Langton report setting up the words for the voice. I never thought that the voice was going to be part of our Constitution. And I am not in favour of that. And I'm not in favour of it because the Constitution must be for all Australians equally. It cannot give one group of people, our first settlers or our most recent arrivals, an advantage or over any other group. To give one group special access, even if it's only advice, discriminates against all other Australians. And therefore, I'm in favour of the voice being established, but I want it done by legislation, and it is by legislation outside of the Constitution.
One of the biggest concerns that I have in all of this is when the Prime Minister says it would be a brave Prime Minister to go against the advice of the voice, and that was the big red flag that went up for me, which was, well, hang on, you can't simultaneously sell to people that it's only advice, it's not the third chamber, but at the same time saying, well, pretty much I'll do whatever they say wants to be done. That's a major reordering of the way that government works. But again, Albo's trying to keep it about the vibe, trying to keep it all nice and general, but what he's actually proposing is, firstly, as you say, permanent establishment of a body that can never be changed, that could become as flawed as ATSIC. But secondly, he's openly saying he will always say yes, no matter how bad the advice is.
Paul, the truth is that the Prime Minister cannot put the legislation together because it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think his argument of saying, let's get the constitutional recognition in place and then the Parliament can decide on the terms of the legislation is because he hasn't actually tried to commit the, what was it, 273 pages of the recommendation from the Calma Langton report into legislation. That doesn't satisfy anyone. Let's hope the voice to Parliament works. I really mean that. I've been working with the Indigenous community since 1980. I'm very much in favour of their recognition and closing the gap. But if it weren't to work, the fact that it's still mentioned in the Constitution, the government might reduce, of the day, might reduce substantially its capability to do anything. Because it doesn't say whether it's going to be a group of people of 22 for more than the established period, whether it's going to be proper funded, paid, etc. So if, sadly, if the Prime Minister goes ahead with this and it's supported and the voice is set up through the Constitution, you might find in 5 years, if the thing goes belly up like ATSIC, that the government of the day, whoever they are, reduce that to one voice and no backup support. So I would much rather the government establish the voice through legislation with the agreement of the Parliament, because there is a gap, as we're seeing in Alice Springs. And those issues have been raised in the past, advice has been given, and advice has not in any way brought about an improvement in the conditions of those who need support. So I'm in favour of the voice to Parliament, but not through reference in the Constitution. That is, it discriminates against everyone else.
No, that's my position as well. For the Liberal Party, what is the best position for them?
And even though the polls are saying it will be passed, there is a huge risk that it won't be passed by the majority of the people and the majority of the states. I don't want the recognition of our Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders to fail, but it's why I separate the two. I want recognition. I want it as a first new chapter in the Constitution. And then secondly, I want an effective voice to Parliament. But it can only be effective if, in fact, it takes the community with them. See, you talk about 56% of the public in favour. What does that leave? 44% that are either undecided or no. That divides the community. You might still get the referendum through, but you've got a divided community. I want all Australians to back Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders through a proper, generous reference in the Constitution. In fact, I want a new first chapter, which would read as follows. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first people and nations on the Australian continent and its adjacent islands. That then would recognise, A, the Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders. Secondly, acknowledge that they are our first settlers. It is indisputable, it is factual, and it actually comes, those words, from the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And I want the voice established, but I don't want something put into the Constitution that discriminates against all other Australians. Now, that is an anti-Indigenous, it's not anti-recognition, it's for the community. It might be popular today to discriminate against one group over another, but the Constitution should be for all of us equally, regardless of when we came, regardless of gender, regardless of every other consideration.